All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining this joint research launch with Thetius and Marcura. I'm delighted to be here today to launch Beyond the Hype, what the maritime industry really thinks about AI and where they're making it work. This is a joint research initiative between Thetius and Marcura. We're very, very grateful to the Marcura team for commissioning this important research. Everyone knows that AI has become something of a hyped topic, even to the point at the weekend I was going oven shopping with my wife, and I spotted on the door of one of the ovens that artificial intelligence was inside the oven, apparently, which does raise the question: are things getting a little bit hyped when it comes to AI, and how do we make sure that we go beyond that hype and actually see where the genuine practical applications are for artificial intelligence in maritime? That's what the research that we're launching today aims to do. What we're going to do today is we're going to take you through a very brief overview of that report. We went out and interviewed and ran a survey on 150 maritime professionals to get their perceptions on artificial intelligence, what they thought about it, whether they're scared of it, how they're using it, and whether their organizations are ready for it. And I'm excited to be able to share the headlines of that research today. Good news, if you're on this session, in about 10 minutes time, you're going to get a copy of that report in your inbox. So you'll be able to read through the full content after this webinar. Once I've gone through that presentation, I'm delighted to say we have a fantastic panel of experts. We're going to discuss the report's content and the implications of the report over the course of the hour. And of course, we're going to hear from you as well. You'll see at the bottom of your Zoom control panel, there is a Q&A function. What I'd like you to do is, if you think of something that you want to ask our panel of experts, if you think of something you want to say, if you disagree with any of the findings of the report or anything our panel have said, I'd love it if you put that into the Q&A box. What we tend to find on these sessions is that we get too few questions right at the beginning and then far too many questions right at the end to be able to answer them all. We've got quite a big group on. I can see we're getting close to about 200 people on this session this morning. So we want to make sure that if you want to ask a question, that we'll get the best possible chance of answering it. So get your questions in early. Don't be shy. And we would love you to be able to contribute to the discussion as much as our expert panel are able to. Right, so where is AI in the maritime industry today? As I said, we conducted a mass survey. Thank you very much to those of you who took part. We had about 150 maritime professionals respond, and 82% of you are optimistic about AI, which is a fantastic starting point. We genuinely came into this research not knowing what the attitudes would be, whether people would be optimistic or fearful. We found that the kind of fearful end was a very, very small minority of people, 1 or 2% of people genuinely fearful about AI in the maritime industry and fearful around their jobs. As well as 82% of people being optimistic about AI, 81% are running pilots. So we are at a point where 4 out of every 5 people who responded have actually engaged in some kind of AI pilot. To put that into context, we normally see in Thetius, we've been covering emerging technology in maritime for about 6 years, and I've been in the maritime industry about 15 years. We normally see that the kind of technology adoption cycle is somewhere close to 5 to 10 years. And what we're seeing here is the vast majority of respondents to this survey are engaging in this technology within a year or two of it being available. That is lightning fast. I think the only thing that's come close to this is the adoption of low Earth orbit satellites. So we're definitely seeing that there is a high speed of adoption happening across the industry. But interestingly, and here's potentially a bit of a snag, only 11% of respondents have any kind of policies in place to enable how those pilots would get scaled. So we've got huge optimism, a large number of people actually engaging with this stuff in a really positive way, but a very, very small number of people are actually saying that their organization has any kind of formal policy in place that will enable the technology to be scaled effectively. 2/3 of people fear over-reliance on AI could erode human skills and judgment. and that's something that we see kind of as a core theme throughout the research is the importance of human skills and human judgment and keeping humans in the loop, and a genuine fear that if we become too reliant on this technology, we will lose those skills. 69% of people worry AI may miss critical red flags in contracts and voyage planning. Contract, voyage planning, and legal generally were kind of the core areas that came up as places where people were perhaps worried about this stuff. And nearly a quarter of respondents said that the promises made by vendors fail to match the reality. So that brings us back to this question of hype, and particularly around vendor hype. So how do we ensure that we build trust with these AI systems, that we don't become victim to the hype story that's perhaps being told in the world, and how do we ensure that when this stuff works, that we scale it up effectively through our organizations? Those are the questions we want to try and answer today. Something that came through quite strongly was actually around the emotional barriers to adopting AI within an organization. I think it's rare that on a Thetius research launch we talk in depth about emotions, but I think it's a genuinely emotive topic for people. Fear of job losses, an element of a kind of sentimental attachment to human decision making and reliance on that experience. Seeing that AI potentially removes that kind of human touch from client relationships and contract negotiations. We all know that maritime is an incredibly relationships-driven industry. And we found that resistance to that is strongest in the operations, chartering and legal departments, which I think probably makes logical sense. So there's a question around how we confront and overcome those emotional barriers if we want to adopt this stuff successfully in our organizations. We also looked at organizational readiness. So how ready is an organization to actually take this stuff on? We looked in the report, it dives deep into an AI maturity curve, which looks at whether an organization is aware of the technology, whether the organization is experimenting with the technology, whether the organization is implementing the technology, and then whether the organization has fully adopted the technology and therefore is mature. 81% of respondents said that they are experimenting. 33% of respondents said they are implementing some kind of AI-driven technology to run at some level of scale. And 18% said they were still exploring, assessing the potential with minimal hands-on experience. One of the critical factors for organizational readiness and what makes an organization able to take on AI is strong leadership support. So 57% of respondents said strong leadership support is a major influence on their organization's readiness for AI. The next biggest factor was employee openness and digital skills. How well equipped are the individuals who are actually working with these technologies day to day to be able to take this stuff on? Only 1 in 5, so 4 in 5 organizations are experimenting with AI or running pilots. Only 1 in 5, 23%, or maybe just shy of 1 in 4, of organizations have implemented training to build trust in AI among staff. So again, you've got 80% of people running pilots, but only 23% of people actually trying to train the staff in a formal way on how this stuff works. And 17% of organizations have taken steps to be transparent about how AI will make decisions within their organizations. There is this overall question around AI being something of a black box. No one really knows how the answers get arrived at, even if the answers seem very sensible and credible on the surface. And actually getting underneath that is a real challenge, and also understanding how those decisions will then impact the organization is a real challenge. So overall, in maritime, we are stuck in what we would call something of a pilot purgatory. So we have high enthusiasm, but low readiness, generally speaking. And adoption is as much a human challenge as it is a technical one. Getting real success in this area depends on embedding AI into your existing workflows, so using AI within the workflows you have, rather than necessarily trying to totally overhaul everything from the start. Keeping humans in the loop for final decision making, building trust through transparency and domain-specific design, and then using verticalized AI, particularly on very maritime-specific areas like contracts, voyage management. All of our Thetius reports come with some kind of recommendations to industry. It's usually 3 or 4, but we couldn't sort of cut it down this time, so we've ended up with 7. I'll just very briefly take you through them. Those are: invest in AI tools built specifically for maritime. There is a huge amount of domain-specific knowledge that standard LLMs and other AI tools just don't have access to, and so there are a large number of organizations now that are building tools that are verticalized just for the maritime sector, and they are well worth exploring in a serious way. Second is actually fostering agency and discernment among your staff. So effectively making sure that your staff have some level of agency with how they're using these tools, and have the ability to create some level of discernment, some level of good judgment about how those tools get used. So it's not just about blindly following whatever the AI system is telling you. Keeping humans in the loop is incredibly important to harness trust, and actually something that we've been working on within our own internal AI policies at Thetius is also that it's incredibly important for accountability. At the end of the day, we still hold the human analysts accountable, whatever the outcome or however the outcome came to. Number 4 is actually about engaging with the emotions. This is not just a systems question, and more so than any other software tool that we've looked at or explored within Thetius in the time we've been running. This is a highly emotive topic, and you should face that head on and engage with it, and make sure you understand people's fears, people's concerns, and be able to take steps to mitigate them. 5 is implement governance frameworks. So coming back to that point, around 80% of users are using AI, but only 11% of respondents actually said that their organization has any kind of governance framework in place. We've seen countless stories of proprietary data, not necessarily in maritime, but in general, of proprietary data being put into public-facing LLM tools like ChatGPT. When you do that, potentially you are inadvertently releasing that data into the public domain for it to be used to train an LLM at some level of scale. So it's something you have to be very, very cautious of, and there's a whole range of other governance issues that we can talk through in the panel. Number 6, demand transparency and real-world impact from vendors. So this comes back to that point around 25% or so of respondents believing vendor hype isn't quite living up to reality. You should be demanding some level of transparency about what is actually going on under the hood when you're working with vendors, and you should be expecting to see some genuine real-world impact. It's not enough to just have AI all over your marketing. You want to actually make sure that you can see that there is genuine business impact to implementing this stuff. And then finally, just encourage experimentation. This stuff is moving very, very quickly. The report it came out about 4 minutes ago. It's probably already out of date because of the speed that the AI is moving, and therefore it's important that within safe bounds you encourage employees to be able to experiment with this stuff and see where it can have the most impact. That was a very, very, very quick high-level summary of the report. The report itself is about 40 pages. It goes into a huge amount of depth on all of this stuff. What I'd like to do now, though, is bring in our expert panelists to talk about the implications of that report and implications of the research, and then also talk about how we can actually go beyond the hype to make sure that we are implementing AI in the most effective way possible. Panelists, what I'd like you to do is we'll come to each of you in turn, and we'll just ask you to introduce yourself. Who are you? What's your role in your organization? And then why don't you just give us your first impressions of the research? Janani, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Janani, VP of Analytics at Marcura, been in the industry for over 15 years, love data, day and night, right? And I think AI has just given us a new dimension in the way we think academic intelligence than just artificial intelligence and technology. To just comment about the report, I think it is definitely a good start where we are not just embracing technology per se, but also understanding various business models and operating models this will eventually impact. And it just boils down to 4 aspects: whether you have good data, whether you understand the logic, because what matters for your customers and for your internal business is really important, and having a good logic with human in the loop, as Giuseppe was also reflecting in one of his comments, human in the loop is really important because it's years and years of experience that the chartering managers and the operations whom we serve typically gain, and we have to gain a lot from them as well. And what's even more important is the cost versus the ROI clarity. So what return on investment do you actually make by investing in AI? What would be your investment strategy? Are you really going to understand the level of complexity that you have when you integrate some of these AI models within the workflows, which is the need of the hour, right? And this is where we often would see some cultural resistance, which is quite common, and we should try and embrace them as well, because at the end of the day, it's human adoption that's even more important. And I think it's okay to have some fear of redundancy or trust, but that's something that we will learn as we progress, because as per your stats as well, Nick, while 80% do believe, it's only 12% who really succeed through pilots. So that's just my 2 cents to start with, but there's quite a lot of opportunities that we'll try and embrace. We'll go ahead with the challenges and see how we break this through better AI models with human in the loop.
Fantastic. Thank you, Janani. I want to come, you sort of made a throwaway comment about good data, which I definitely want to circle back on because I think that's incredibly important. But before we do though, Christian, why don't you go next?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Christian Christensen, and thank you for inviting me on this webinar. 35 years in the industry, no longer in the corporate day-to-day work. I focus more on investing and advising and board positions within shipping. I think it's very good to have this report. There's some numbers and some statistics to what we all think about. Two things that came to my mind was that the C-suite and the leaders are all, or most of them, plus 80%, I think it was in the report, expressed a genuine interest in AI. But how come only 23% of companies are training their staff on AI or even the governance part? It tells me that we have a leadership challenge within the industry. It's very easy to, yes, of course we're interested in AI, but actually you need to set aside resources, time, and energy to embrace AI. Then I also looked in the report. We had a little bit of a sneak peek preview on the report, and it's all about efficiency. And efficiency, where's the innovation part? Where's the impact part? So I think we are still, as an industry, now I'm generalizing to get a good discussion. As an industry, we look at this as an advanced Google, but we need to think of it as I think we need to think of it as a completely different beast. That means we need to think outside the box, and that's another, I think, a leadership challenge. So those were kind of the main points that I saw, and it's probably too early for the industry to talk, and on this even on this podcast, on this webinar, to talk about agentic AI, because we are not there. We are in the early phase of digitalization, basically, as an industry. So instead of we talk about LLMs and agentic AIs, actually we need to get our house in order with data and governance and stuff like this. But yeah, hopefully more on that later. So thank you.
Fantastic. And I think leadership attitudes to this stuff, I think, is absolutely critical. So we'll make sure to kind of dive in on that as the discussion evolves. But there is definitely a disconnect there between the C-suite and everyone else. Joachim?
Well, thanks for having me, for the invite. My name is Joachim Donkers. I am working as an independent consultant within shipping and primarily with tech. My first impression about the report is like it does not really surprise me that so many people stay as like we're doing something with AI. It's like in this day and age, not saying it is kind of corporate suicide, not saying that you're not doing something with it. For me, one of the key things that left me reading the report, and basically every news, like I see AI everywhere. But if I start thinking and decomposing, what is the AI that we're using? Well, we see a lot of language model related stuff that the interaction, the interface towards the human makes that very easy. And if I see where we want to deploy it, we want to make things that we already do. We want to do it at easier, we want to do it faster, and we want to do it cheaper. And with cheaper, it also means like we want to scale it. We want somebody to read all contracts. We want somebody to read all emails. That is humanly not possible to do that. So what Christian already mentions, like where's the innovation part? What I see there, where we deploy the AI, is that we see a lot of operational focused decisions, less tactical and strategic, which, with all respect to isolated cases, have a limited impact. So we address things like catching mistakes, handling large volumes of data, like already mentioned, like emails, Q&A, a large body of data. That's what we see a lot of the AI is used for. When we take that a step further and you want to answer questions like, what is my my tonnage strategy for the for my fleet of 15 bulkers for the next 3 to 6 months. I think at that moment, not just the data becomes important, but also it's like we need to invest in models that have been around for a long time. Thinking about more traditional operations research tools like deterministic planning tools or even simulation to get a sense of where the opportunities. And I think the AI will have a great opportunity working with that, but we should not neglect investing in those tools together with better data.
I think that's a really good point, because I think we've almost ended up in a world where AI has become synonymous with ChatGPT, when in reality there are a number of organizations who've been doing AI in maritime, using machine learning and other tools for decades, but it's almost sort of been swallowed up by the kind of large language model hype. And so I think that's a really good point about tool selection, I guess. Last but by no means least, Giuseppe.
Yes, hi, thank you so much for the invitations. I'm Giuseppe Oliveri, director of D'Amico, and interested in the project. I was looking at the numbers as all of the guys are looking, and it's interesting to see that only 61% is still involved with cybersecurity. When you start to use AI and the systems on the maritimes today's days, you need to be sure that your systems are all well secure for communications. On the other side, a lot has been said, and thank you, Janani, for that, is about people. Everyone think that the AI can replace people. People are irreplaceable for my view. What you will have is more skilled people working in shipping. And that is something that we will see in the future with AI. Once AI get trained, people will use AI to be helping during fixtures, during procedures or plannings for the next 3-6 months. But we need to have that skill set still set up. And companies are still working also on the procedures or the new systems, how train the people, because there are not one trainer that fits all. So we'll be seeing, and we will see how it goes during the time.
Thank you, Giuseppe. And I think that point around people is a really interesting one, and making sure that these tools are being used to enhance people's efforts rather than replace them. And there's an interesting case study in the report about Klarna, who declared about a year ago that they were going to become an AI first business. They cut something like 700 staff. And then suddenly the quality of what they were doing started dropping. And now they've rode back on that position in quite a big way. So I think that's a really valuable point, and we'll definitely come back to it. I want to start, though, the discussion, if I may, with Janani, your point around data, sort of relying on good data. And perhaps for the audience, could you just give us an understanding of why fundamentally having good data is still sort of critically important in a post-AI world?
I like the fact that you said in a post-AI world, which means I need to also give a couple of lines on prior AI becoming a popular thing for us. So it was always the 3 Vs, whether you have good volume of data, is it the veracity of data, and how quickly the freshness of the data and the timelines also matters, right? But in addition to this, what's becoming really important is the context, whether you have the right context, especially when you talk about weather delays, do you have the right context around swell and the insights that actually impacts chartering managers and fixing better voyages and making good decisions. But overall, I think it's even more important that diversity would try and beat uniformity in one way or the other, right? Because while you have a vessel that really depends on multiple instruments, and of course, even the commercial data teams that we deal with, they do rely a lot on ensuring that you have the risk analysis done and ensure you also have a clear overview of the unbalanced clauses before you actually fix voyages. And it's even more important that you create new data sets in this process. So it's not just the volume and the veracity and the velocity, whether you're able to actually create new data assets in this process. Post AI is going to be really challenging for most companies, but that's where Marcura has started experimenting, or rather even delivering quite key concepts to chartering managers around check before fixing beyond the traditional check before fixing. Because it's not just looking at some of your checklists, but would you be able to correlate with your historical lay times and understand the most impactful terms and unbalanced clauses? And you want to actually check your existing charter party with your standard BIMCO terms to see if there were any potential demurrage leakages. So the moment you talk about some of these critical decisions that are impacting their workflows, but also eventually the P&L, it's really important that we start viewing data in order to create a new data asset. And therefore, you will not go into this rabbit hole of big errors and big costs. And you will also ensure that the trust is completely built on data, and the governance around data is going to be really critical as well. So I think it's trying to think data as more, not just a data point, but rather as an asset that would eventually turn into a new product that helps not just a couple of persona within a customer company, but also integrates multiple workflows. So how do you ensure that the integration is also possible? And that's where I think the agentic AI will march forward more perfectly in this maritime world.
Interesting. I think the interesting thing for me about that is that you talked a lot about critical decisions, but you certainly implied that humans are making those decisions at this point, and I think that's a really important distinction that we should be thinking about and should be making. At the moment, it feels like most of these tools are gearing up to support humans to make better decisions. Joachim, I'd be interested in your point of view on this, both on a kind of data governance standpoint, but also around that tool selection point that you made.
Well, I think data has, in any data project, has been a challenge. Even if you go back 15 years and you try to make a simple regression analysis to support the decisions, like data was also challenging at that time, let alone with the deep and machine learning. So I think data is always an issue, especially if you try to train an algorithm that should learn from that data, that should weight the relationships from that data. But if I look at say other decision support models that can help you, and I think with the whole discussion about agentic AI or MCPs, whatever you want to call them, they can perfectly interact with them. If you get to decisions like tonnage allocation to support that kind of decisions, I think the data is less crucial. But where I see a great opportunity for a lot of the AI thing is to create the context. It's like to gather context from large volumes of unstructured data to produce new data that can be used as an input. what is happening in Brazil with the output of mining or of agriculture? How does that drive the demand? So the AI can really help you to crunch that, create a better insight of that. But then you need a more structured approach, like you probably do in Excel today, to automate decisions on evaluating supply and demand of particular tonnage in an area, or to manage your risk. So I think thinking about how do you make decisions, what is your decision process looking like right now? What do I want it to look like in the future? What kind of risks do I want to mitigate with that more structured approach? I mean, that's an essential step for any organization. And at that moment, they need to start thinking, hey, what is the place of AI in this whole scope? So I think that's, for me, AI should be more a second step. The first question really should be, what do I want to accomplish?
Yeah, I think that approach makes a huge amount of sense, and I think this point around creating new data, I think is really important, because we've always had the issue in the industry, and digital transformation to a certain extent has always been hampered by requiring data to be highly structured, and that most shipping data is not structured. And so I think we're entering quite an exciting period. Both Janani and Joachim, you've both talked about where new data can be created from unstructured sources that can support decision making. But achieving that, go on, sorry, Joachim.
Yeah, I think to that, like Satna recently had some interesting webinars where they demonstrated how they can use their model, their MCPs, their model communication protocols on their email repository. So they could question, they could ask like, what is happening with that vessel? What is happening there? So I think that's a great example of a way of interacting with the unstructured data, and you possibly can take that a step further to create a more formalized time series or data set around that, instead of just the Q&A that they demonstrated before. But the technology offers great opportunities.
And I think that makes a huge amount of sense, and those opportunities are very exciting, but achieving that requires some level of skill in the organization. And Christian, you brought up an interesting point in your opening discussion, that the leaders are all going after this stuff, and it's very exciting, but those who are actually taking the time to train their staff, I think is something around 20%.
I didn't say they're going after it. I didn't say they're going after it.
Go on.
So,
what's your view on this?
You need to but when you say train people in AI, it can become a little bit fluffy. I think it's about actually change, or let's say train people in change leadership, and maybe start to prepare your organizations for more changes in the future. I think we all can agree, probably 100% can agree, there will be more frequent changes in the future. So the most important is that you actually train your organization for changes. So that's not so much about AI, but that's quite simple. But it really means that the leadership, C-suite and the leadership, even the boards, I don't see many transformational or digital savvy people on the boards either. They need to preach this every day. They need to go first. They need to basically be evangelists about this, visualize a certain kind of future. They cannot visualize the exact future, but they have to express this to their organization. Then you start to train your organization to become a little bit more modular, a little bit more adaptable to embrace these things. But going back to what Joachim said, and I fully agree, is that I don't think we are in a place in the maritime where we can do a lot of creative things on the data, because a lot of it is unstructured. But then we, unfortunately, or fortunately, if you are one of the players, you are a little bit, you can say, stuck with some of your suppliers of communication, of port information, of all kind of data that they have structured. And they have teams that are really strong on AIs. Because we are in a period in maritime, a few years probably, until we are ready to really embrace this. But until then, you're a little bit, I say, stuck Now we are with Marcura. So I said, but then you have to hook up with your suppliers in a different way. And yes, there will be. I saw there was about 23%, I think, were not so happy with the vendors' promises. But it's about co-creation. Nothing is perfect from the go-get. So I think that you have to stick with the people who has your data and who's actually organized your data. Like Joachim also said about a good example of Sedna. Marcura, of course, is also a good example. You have other examples in industry. But until there is a different AI agentic world for maritime, you have this interim period where you need to work with what you have. And I don't see that the shipping companies are really ready to basically dare to burn down their own models to build up a, let's say, a different model. And maybe they shouldn't, because these are good models, many of them.
Maybe Nick,
so that was a bit of a spill, but
no, go for it, Janani.
Yeah, and maybe just to add to that, as simple as it might sound, C-suite CEOs typically respond well to business outcomes. So talking AI more along the lines of business outcomes rather than mere technology would probably a good place to start, Christian, if you agree, and then also ensuring that there is proper roadmap and maturity roadmap, because these days when we sit with several stakeholders, they're also talking about what's the rate of digital maturity within your company. It's not just about just having budgets, but what's the digital maturity ratio that your company carries? And I'm sure every investor is going to question, and this is going to be one of the key metrics on how you even evaluate your portfolio. It's not just portfolio of use cases, on how the portfolio of the company is being evaluated. And therefore, digital maturity curve, the ratio is going to be quite critical for an investment metric as well.
But then you also need to maybe put some new KPIs. You cannot just do the same KPIs, efficiency. No, how about some innovative KPIs? How are you engaging with your customers? How are you catching the attention of more customers? How are you expanding the market and so on? So, yeah, but it doesn't happen overnight. So C-suite are not exactly known for being patient either. So it's a fine balance there.
Giuseppe, can I get your view on this, because you've been living some of this stuff in D'Amico. So what's been the experience of implementing some of these tools, and how do you go about creating that kind of organizational buy-in at the C-suite and below?
But it's nice to hear is not everything started from the head and it's going down. But usually, as Christian was saying, the head is very happy to go. But when you go and try to explain to your guys that what's going to happen, the first impact is always work related. You have these new systems coming to take your position, your job, your daily. So we need to create, and that is something that up to now have been not easy to explain, because everywhere, as you said yesterday, in the washing, and we were watching AI in the dryers, yeah. It's crazy because no one explained what AI do and how it works, and how can make a life easier for all of us. We were working with Janine Janani on one of the charter parties and the confrontations. That doesn't take the job of a person. That will help and guide a person to see immediately where there is a fault or there is a mistake. That is the kind of understanding that we need to have. There was a questions about that people are getting tired of all these questions about replacing humans, but that is what have been solved up to now, where we need to work instead on explaining on a daily basis nearly that AI is not going to replace anyone. AI is there to assist you, to work with you, to make sure that your job get easier, as every single systems that we have learned to use. I remember when I started the disbursement accounts were done manually. Now we have the systems that do disbursement accounts. The fixtures, most of the fixtures before you need to do it by hand. More today are all on the systems, and that is a kind of AI if you want to take it at the beginnings. So yes, is a systems that need to be worked and worked with the people within the companies. And what we have done in the Mico is trying to train our people, to discuss with our people. So we will have webinars. We have done internal webinars and on how the systems will help the people. And I hear Donkers and Christians talking. Yeah, it's true. It's from the top going down, but everything's need to be working together. And information and package KPIs first need to be created. It's a new system. This is not the perfect system. So we need to work with the systems to make it good as the others. And there was another questions about the informations. And was Kristen was talking about Sedna. We use Sednas because of the package and how the information are available. So there are systems there that are already working on some directions. Working with them will help any company to achieve better.
And Joachim, on this training point and creating the environment where people don't feel like they will be replaced, what have you seen in the work you've done in the last few years? How that's done well? Is it just as Giuseppe says, it's just consistently repeating that message over and over again?
Yes.
Well, there are two things. I think we need to see AI as a tool, a colleague that you work with well, not that works against you. And certainly replacing is a really bad idea. Replacing your junior staff with AI is a really bad idea, since who's going to be the senior vice president in 5, 10, 15 years? It's like at that moment, if you don't educate this generation of people, we'll end up a situation where you don't have executives in a decade anymore that understand the business. But to refer to your question about what have I seen, well, I've worked a lot with technology called advanced planning and scheduling. So it's basically big optimization models. There we also saw the promise of the vendors. It's like we're gonna create an optimizer that's gonna run your business. Of course, I understand every CEO would love to have that little button on his desk that he presses, grabs a coffee, and his business is running for the rest of the day. That ain't gonna happen. But what we saw there, when you talk about training towards that goal hardly everybody reaches. But the steps that you can take along, you can, with a model, you can create transparency, you can create decision support systems. And that's what I heard quite a few people talking about here in this discussion is like, how can I assist? How can I assist an employee in its decision making? So you really have the human in the loop. If that goes well in say 99 out of 100 cases, that usable things like, well, this is kind of cumbersome to do this every time. I trust the AI, but you build that trust by showing it is working. Once you're there, you can start automating it in something in an automated way. But you're still a long way from like fully automating your business. So we will always need people. It's really about building a strong team of which I called 10 years ago, 15 years ago in a little article I wrote. The winning team is the man and machine, and that I think is as valid for AI today. It's like we really need to create tools that help people, that help them to crunch more data, to support their decision making, and some of that decision making we can automate. I don't think that's going to be what we refer to as AI, but more traditional modeling, since you would want to be able to explain it. And with AI, it's always a little guesswork what comes out of it. But yeah, the people are essential for working with the models.
We have, with the interest of time, we have to move on to questions. But there's a question that is absolutely bang on to follow on from what you were just talking about there, Joachim. The question says, on the point of testing vendors' promises, given the explainability or black box issue for machine learning systems, what kind of questions can a ship owner ask to help verify the performance, reliability, and suitability of a system. Giuseppe, can I come to you first on that? I think it's a really interesting question. What are the sort of questions you're asking vendors for this sort of stuff?
The questions are from the easiest ones to the hardest ones. You need to fill the rooms and to make sure that you can make sure that the people will understand what it's all about. So depends on the levels that you're talking, so you need to adjust the tones and the discussions. You need to make it easier to understand. At the moment, everyone talk about something that seems to be coming from a different world. We need to make it available to everyone to understand.
Okay, so if a vendor can't describe what
Yes.
something's doing in simple terms, that might be a bit of a red flag. Janani, what's your view on that? What should vendors be asked who are in this AI space?
Yeah, I think I would also answer probably what vendors should reflect to customers, to speak the customer language, which is precisely what our customers would also expect. So, which is, are we still retaining or taking away the freedom for them to operate in a manner they would like to operate? And do they have better control and transparency? And do they feel quite confident in adopting these technology, be it MCP or agentic AI or even a chatbot at this point, to integrate workflows and optimize their operations? So it's boiling down to just three things: freedom, control, and confidence. Because what matters for the C-suite, as Christian would also agree, is just control, the cost, and the risk. So are we highlighting enough risk? So in any of the words that I just used, there were no technical jargons. These are simple layman terms, which would certainly, most of the shipping companies would resonate with. And this is the language I think vendors should also take into account when they speak, rather than going too technical, because at the end of the day, we are solving real business problems and we're looking for real business outcomes, and not selling technology for the sake of just keeping it, for the marketing gimmick. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. I think that's really, really valuable. Christian, one for you.
Okay. I just had one comment to Giuseppe.
Go on. Yeah, go for that
I
first.
understand all these reservations. I do think that in general, I do think if you explain to people why are we doing this and what's in it for you, or what do you, dear colleague, have to do differently, then I think most people are very, let's say, very positive about things. Yeah. Go ahead. You had a question.
Yeah, is the success of AI projects any different to other IT projects? So whoever asked this question says that ChatGPT says over 70% of AI of IT projects fail. So what do you view as the kind of failure rate, and then what should organizations do about that?
I think that if we as an industry, and again I'm generalizing, jump on AI big projects and so on, we will fail more than 70% because we are a little bit behind. So this is not so different from a digital project, and that's why in this period, we in this interim period, I think, because AI is developing exponentially, you have that data with some of your vendors. Then put some pressure on them and ask, I would like to see this and this, and I would like to see it live. I would like to be able to innovate this to my customer. But the vendors, a few of the vendors, have your data, and they have organized it. And actually, a few of the vendors, not all of them, have the right mindset to work with you, not only for profit, but actually to co-create better products. And this is what so for me, it's not, AI, it sounds very fluffy, but again, you have some vendors that are doing this full time, and we are not there to talk about agentic AI yet, but it will come faster than we think, I think. And that's why you need to prepare your organizations mindset wise, and it's not about age, it's also about mindset. And I've seen that myself. You have maybe a 30-year-old who is more set in his mind than a 50-year-old who's just eager to learn new things and understand, well, life is a constant change. So
yeah, I think that's a really important point. Within our team, most of the people that work for Thetius write in some way, shape, or form for a living, and so they are naturally very nervous about these kind of tools. But so I think that mindset point is very important, and I agree that it's not necessarily a question of age. One I'll throw open to the panel generally. There's sort of two similar questions that I'll lump together. The first is: are there any widely adopted maritime AI solutions besides Marcura and ChatGPT? Is it just that 80% of the industry are using ChatGPT? And then the second question as part of that is: what's the most common approach you've seen in the maritime industry? Are companies looking for vertical application in specific departments, or are they going for a more transverse approach where management tries to find common use cases across the organization? Anyone have any insight on that? Anyone know of any particularly exciting AI tools that they have seen over the last few months? Janani, go for it.
I would say, I think more than tools, they have developed capabilities internally. So I think they're using ChatGPT and some of the existing models, but they're building a wrapper on top of it and augmenting workflows and building their own MCP agents. So some of our customers have also done that. But the beauty about it is that they still partner with Marcura for ensuring that they have the right data and the governance behind it. So it's always a co-creation, right? So I would say our customers are very keen about enhancing their current talent pool. They're building up squads and AI guild, and these things are becoming very common. So the way we look at engineers have suddenly become prompt engineers, and then we have not just solution architect, but we have storytellers and context mindset people. So that's the direction people are taking right now.
I think that's a really good point, is that what it enables someone with a non-technical or perhaps less technical skill set to do in an organization is really exciting. The term vibe coding has been knocking around for some months, without throwing more jargon in, but it's effectively that people without a software engineering background can start to think about writing software and prompting software into existence. Not necessarily that it could be something for production, but to be able to prototype stuff. So that then opens up a whole world of possibilities. Christian, what's your view on that? I can see you want to say something.
Yeah, sorry, but I'm going back to a little bit about this leadership. I joined a AI seminar in the States a couple of weeks ago, and one of the companies, they did a hack simply by, first of all, the C-suite, of course, were preaching this big time, but actually the IT team made a how can I say AI for dummies for the C-suite, so they at least changed some of their behavior. Also, in bigger companies. I mean, why is it that the HR department often is the one that have the least technology? Well, if HR wants to talk about transformation, they should be leading that pack as well. So there are certain hacks you can do to actually show the organization we're moving in this direction and we're serious about it. So,
staying with you, Christian, question here: soundbite from a shipping CEO in a coffee break at a conference. Another interesting panel on digitalization and AI. What I miss is this: exactly what do I take home and ask my organization to start doing differently tomorrow? Where should they put their curiosity and efforts? And I'll just build on that by saying I totally get your point around mindset, but moving past mindset, let's look really practically. What are the things that organizations should look at doing tomorrow?
I go back to this transformational training. Make a strategy for this. Get the governance in order. Have a training. Be more open-minded, like Giuseppe was saying. Apparently, they're doing that in D'Amico. That's great. And then work with your vendors, because they fucking have your data, so you have to work with them. Yep. And then instead of treating them like a vendor for paint, it's your partner. Then be friends with them and try to co-create and demand some of the stuff that you need for your business to make it more profitable or to do things. And then in a couple of years, this will change so quickly, but you need to be ready. Thank you.
Jochen, what's your response to that?
Well, I think for the CEO should go home and really consider, it's like, where do I like to see that AI has an effect? And then really it's like asking that question first. And then what Christian says, like, go work with your vendors, go figure out how can we have an impact, start being innovative, start thinking out of the box, and then try to create a roadmap how we're going to execute this. So I think that's the thing The moment that they stay in the mode of like, well, we want to, it's a side project, AI or analytics at what is a side project, we just keep on running it, our business as normal. No, it needs to be, you need to determine, I want to have it their effect. And you also need to have the acceptance, I would say, as a C-suite that, well, I would say 9 out of 10 attempts, explorations probably end in nothing. And that's not always easy to explain, especially not if you really if you really make a big capital investment in it, then that can become expensive. So experiment, learn, but also it's like, where do I want to see the impact? I think that's that's where it starts.
I think on that, where do I want to see the impact point as well? I think, and Christian, you've sort of spoken around this. You can cutting costs and finding efficiency is finite. You can only do that, ultimately to zero, but you can't take it any further. But actually finding new avenues for growth is potentially infinite. And so that I think is a really interesting way to think about this. Instead of looking for the efficiencies, looking at where the new sources of growth can come from. We're starting, unfortunately, to run up on time, although I feel like we could probably go on for another few hours at least. There's just one other question on demographics that I will just briefly answer. The very short answer is go and read the report. We do a full demographic breakdown. The slightly longer answer is it's roughly 50% senior decision makers. So I think it's about 30% C-suite, 20% senior managers, and it's about 30% ship operators, and I think off the top of my head, I don't have it in front of me, it's about 50% technology suppliers, and then a few others. In terms of who actually responded to that survey, a couple of other very quick questions that always come up. One is this recorded? Yes, it is, and we'll put it out live on our YouTube channel in the next 24 hours or so. And where do I get the report? It is now, or in the next hour, it'll be live on the Thetius website. If you're on this session, though, it should already be in your inbox. We've got about 3 minutes left. So what I'd like to do is ask our panelists, we'll just very briefly run through you. If there was one thing that someone in the audience should take back to their organizations tomorrow to make an impact and start engaging with this stuff really positively, what is that one thing and what should they do? Janani, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, in fact, I would like to answer one of the questions that the CEO in the coffee break was asking. So the answer is 3, 2, 1. So run a curiosity discovery session within your team, just to understand where you're running out of money, where exactly should you be saving, and then probably nominate an AI scout, because it's important for you to understand what matters and could this actually apply to whatever you're building. And then you may have to create a curiosity map, because I'm trying to use curiosity quite a lot because that's one of the questions also from him, right? And I think on top of that, you may have to revisit the KPIs. So it's also about discovering what you want through the curiosity discussions, and then having an AI guild, an AI squad approach, because most of your talent management is within the middle management, or probably even one level down. And I think it's important to revisit some of these KPIs so that it's not a technology discussion, but rather purely business outcomes for both you and your counterparts, because it's also the commercial relationship with your counterparts that matters as well.
I think that makes perfect sense. Thank you. Joachim?
Yeah, I've said it a number of times before, but it's really, for me, it's like, know where you want what decisions you wanted to have an impact. So if you map your decisions and map where you envision the impact.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important. And I think if that's the first question you're asking, I think you set yourself up well. Christian?
Yeah, I'll say something differently than what I've been punching. Believe in the data. I think we have a tendency in shipping to believe that we are so good and we make 9 out of 10 decisions correctly, and the data, if you have a system that shows that that gives you let's say 8 out of 10 let's say right or wrongs, you'll, as in shipping, will point on the 2 that they didn't get right. But in reality, we as humans, we don't, and it involves all of us, we are not as correctly as we are. We're full of that bias. Roger Federer, he was number 1 in tennis. many years, and he only won 54% of his points. I mean, that tells you that we don't make 9 out of 10 decisions correctly in shipping. So believe the data if you have good data.
That's a high failure rate. I like that. Final word goes to Giuseppe.
Same questions. I think that the first one is where AI can help me, or where, and work together with your team to see which best ways to do it with you, because it's your team that need to guide you on the directions. And the data, as I said, is the most important part on all of these.
Fantastic. That leaves it just to me to wrap up in some way. Last thing I'll say is go and download the report. It goes into a huge amount more detail than we've been able to in this hour. But I think if you start with understanding what you want to achieve, then think about who needs to achieve it and what skills you need to equip them with and how to change their mindset, then it's a case of data, and then finally it's a case of tools. Most people get that in reverse, which is where they start to go wrong. I think you'll end up in a pretty good place. Thank you so much to all of our panelists, Joachim, Janani, Giuseppe and Christian. Thank you so much to Marcura for commissioning this research in the first place, and thank you to everyone in the audience for hanging in there and asking such interesting and engaging questions. The report should be in your inbox now, but if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to us or reach out to some of the experts at Marcura. I'm sure they'd be happy to help. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.